I was thinking about what to do, and I had one written that I was planning on doing. I've written like 4 or 5 over this last year because of doing ministry lab. I had to preach once every 3 weeks. I was thinking about what to do, and I have a really catchy title for this one, interestingly enough. It's not cheesy at all. I got approval from my parents, or not my parents, my sisters. It's time to be real. Really catchy, cheesy, I know. But as I was thinking about what to speak on, I was like, thinking about like fruits of the Spirit, but we seem to go through that like once every quarter, it seems like almost. And so I decided on this as I was just thinking over my last semester, or my last year, about life. And it's interesting how sometimes whenever there's a major event in someone's life, we try to understand them or adjust our emotions to them. When there's a new baby that's born, we rejoice with them, we praise them, we're so happy for them, but we don't really understand it necessarily. When there's a trial in someone's life, we try to comfort them, we try to relate to them. When there's a death, we try to mourn. We don't understand it totally. I talked with my parents, and I've talked with a few other parents, and they'll tell you there's nothing like having a newborn baby. That's your own. The joy you have. I talked with people who've gone through trials, and there's nothing like you think you understand what people are going through, but there's nothing like you go through it yourself. And this happened to me this semester. One of my friends, Jaden Goins, passed away, and it was sudden. We just started Greek week, everything was going well. He and I just took a test that morning, and then I get the call. I'm at dinner at 6 o'clock, I get the call, Jaden got hit by a truck. Life gets real. And at times when you don't understand why or when, or for what reason. And it's amazing how many people got real after that. Got real about their relationship with Christ, got real about their relationship with other people, got real just about how they were living their life. And we went through that week, and on Thursday afternoon, Pastor Kurt Skelly was there for chapel, and he preached a message entitled, "What is Your Life?" And I'm not preaching that sermon, I'm preaching my own, but I'm using one of his passages, James 17, or James 4, there's no James 17. I'm using his passage, and I want us to think, well, it's time to be real. Some of you are going off to college. We're going to have 7th graders in here next week. We're going to have all kinds, there's going to be change. Some of us are moving. Life's going to get real. Life's going to change. And you got to get it figured out today. So we're gonna very simple proposition. We learned how to do propositions in school, and I don't really like it, and it looks like it's faded. But God wants you to be real about your life. So we're going to do 2 things. We're going to consider our lives, and then we're going to surrender it. So first thing, consider your life. I just have 3 questions here. It's kind of simple, but let's read through James 4. We're going to be in verses 13 through 17. It's interesting, I'm a little nervous about this. I've never been nervous about ministerial lab when I'm preaching in front of my peers, but I'm more nervous about preaching in front of you guys for some reason. Once you're there, James 4, I'm going to read verse 13. It says this, "Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow, we will go to such and such a city, spend there a year, buy and sell, and make profit. Whereas you do not know what will happen tomorrow. For what is your life? It is even a vapor that appears for a little time, and then vanishes away. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will go and do this or that. But now you boast in your arrogance, and all such boasting is evil. Therefore, to him who knows to do good and does it not, to him it is sin." So I just have 3 questions today. As we consider our lives, as we evaluate our life and how we're living and who we are, I just have 3 questions for us to consider. What mindset are you in? See, James here is giving a call to the people he's writing to. And this is probably the first book, Pastor talked about in church on Sunday, this is probably the first book written in the New Testament. Coming right off the heels, or probably before the Jerusalem Council in Acts 15. And so James is writing, this book is known as the Proverbs of the New Testament. He's writing this book, and he's trying to cover a whole host of things. And he comes to this point, he's talking about being prideful and getting away from worldliness, and he's coming to this section that is full of worldliness. And he gives a call here. It's an imperative call. It says, "Come now." The phrase "come now" means to listen up. The King James says, "get to now." It means quickly. Come on, let's understand. Let's think here. It's an imperative. James is calling us to listen, to hear. It's also a directive. James is asking them to let him lead him. Let him lead them. Or to let them be led by someone. To look at the scripture and be led by God, be led by James. It's the same way when Paul says, be ye followers of me as I am followers of Christ. James is calling them saying, hey, listen to me because I'm listening to God. It was to specific people. James was writing to Christians. He was writing to the Jerusalem church and to others. And these are new believers. These are people that need to hear this. So James is writing this book, and he gives a call. He says, hey, come now. Let's look at what he says here. Come now, you who say today or tomorrow we will go to such and such a city, spend the year there, buy and sell and make profit. And so he gives us two mindsets that we're supposed to look at. And he asks them, what mindset are you in? First, he shows us the worldly mindset of the world. Come now, you who say today or tomorrow we will go to such and such a city, spend a year there, buy and sell and make profit. See, the world mindset says that we can make plans without the awareness of the hand of God. That we are in control. That's what the word says. It says, you who say. It tells them that you're in control of your life. And James is challenging this ideology because this was the ideology of the Jews. This was the ideology of the entire world back then. Because this is what they did. The Jews would go to Ephesus, would go to these different places and trade and buy and sell. They'd spend time there. They'd do this. They'd go, much like traders and people today, and business people. And they would do this. But James isn't challenging that. He's challenging the ideology of they think they can control their life. Because it's a very prideful statement. They say, we will. That's a prideful statement that they think they know. And they think they can control the winds. The winds of their life, today or tomorrow. They think they know when they can do something. They think they can control when they do something. They think they can control the wheres of their life. They say, go to such and such a city. Spend there a year. They think that they know where they can go and what their limits are. Didn't Lot think that? Lot think he could set camp towards Sodom and he'd be just fine. And what happened? Later in the book of Genesis, when they look at him, they see that he's in the city. He couldn't control his wares. He lost control. So like right there, just when you think you control your wares, just give it to God at that point. Because we can't control our wares. We can't control the wise. That's what we think we can. We think we can control the wise because it says, spend there a year and buy and sell and make profit. Now why would they go do this? To make profit, to buy and sell. And James is saying, hey, you can't control them. And he says that in verse 14, he says, whereas you do not know what will happen tomorrow. You can't control everything. It's interesting that when you let the master, God being the master of your house, be the master, and you're the servant, everything works out. But when you try to become the boss, when you try to become the master, everything goes completely downhill. There's a reason God's got us. The reason He tells us in Philippians to be careful for nothing, to not worry about anything, but give it to God, because He's got us. He'll take care of us. We don't need to control the when, the where, the why, because He already knows why we'll do this, when we'll do it, where we'll do it. And James is trying. He's saying, hey, don't be in the world's mindset. Don't be in a worldly mindset. He says in verse 16, he says, instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we shall do this or that. He says, hey, instead, you're in the world's mindset. You who say, he's calling those people who are saying, self-proclaiming that they're going to do something, that they know what's going on. And he says, hey, instead you ought to say, I'll be in God's mindset. Instead you ought to say, I'm going to allow God to work in my life. Isn't that what we're supposed to do? Isn't what us as Christians ought to do is give God our life? Let Him control it, let Him run it. Why? Because our life is not our own. That's what 1 Corinthians 6:20 says. It says, for you were bought with a price, therefore glorify God in your body and your spirit, which are God's. Our life is God's. Our bodies is God's tabernacle. If we think we can control the whens, the wheres, the whys, we think we can control our lives, we're not giving it to God. So James is calling and says, hey, don't be in this mindset. Don't let the world control you and tell you that you can control your own life. Instead, give it to God. I'll give you an example. Next Wednesday, I think I'm supposed to be there at like 10. Next Wednesday at 8, I'm going to drive down to Southeast Baptist Tabernacle and start my internship there. That's my plan. I think that's what the Lord wills, but I don't know if it'll happen. Next week, if the Lord wills, I will be going to Southeast Baptist Tactical with it, but if the Lord wills, I could just easily not be going there. I mean, this is what Jaden Goins thought. I mean, he thought the Lord wanted him to be going to Honduras. That's what he's studying for. He's pastoral ministries. He was minor in missions. He was going to go serve with his parents in Honduras and help them. That was his plans. That's what he thought the Lord was leading to. And he decided to take an extra shift for a friend. Worked on Airport Boulevard outside Pensacola Christian College, and got hit by a truck. DUI, 90 miles an hour. See, when we let the Lord do His work, it will come to what God wants it to come to. I mean, it's sad. I'm going to go off tangent. It's sad that Jaden passed away, but the testimony that he had, the change that came to his friends, the change that came to me, to other people in the college that didn't know him, because of his testimony. Because he knew that God was in control. And he knew that he needed to do what God wanted to do, no matter what would happen. He even said so. One of his friends passed away back the summer before. He said, "No one knows what tomorrow will hold, but I'm going to do what I can for God now." It was time to be real. It was a wake-up call to him. It was a wake-up call to, when it happened, when he passed away, it was a wake-up call to everybody on campus, and it was time to wake up. It was time to be real, because a guy that just turned 19 a month before passed away, someone my age. I was turning 19 2 months later. And someone my age, my friend, passed away. See, in God's mindset, we don't need to be in control. Because it's if the Lord wills. So what mindset are you in? You in a worldly mindset? James calling you, he's saying, "Hey, come now, you who say." Or are you in God's mindset? We all say we're in God's mindset. We all say we are trying to listen to God, but too often or not, we're in that worldly mindset of saying, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this or that. Next question he asks is, what is your life? Look at verse 14. It says, "For you, whereas you do not know what will happen tomorrow, for what is your life? It is even a vapor that appears for a little time and vanishes away." What is our lives? It is a vapor, something fragile. The illustration here of vapor is like a wisp of morning fog. Something that's there and then it's not. A steam. When you open the cap on a steam pot, you don't see fog, you see a bunch of fog and then it's gone. That's what our lives are like, a vapor. Something fragile. Our lives are fleeting. Your life goes by like a snap. Hey, I can remember like yesterday, leaving Rensselaer, coming to Trinity. Oh, graduated high school. Not going to see Perry that much. Oh, I'm done with my first year of college. I remember looking into college, be like, this is going to take forever, 16 weeks for one semester. I'm not going to be able to see my parents, not going to be home, not going to see my friends. And man, when I finished that first year, I was like, man, I remember yesterday coming here. I remember yesterday, my mom crying on the what is it called, the porch of Rice Tower. Man, it goes by like that. You ask any old person, they can still remember what they did in high school. They still remember all that. But they'll tell you, it goes by like a snap. It's fleeting. That's why every single day matters. We don't teach, the Bible doesn't say teach us the number of our years, it says teach us the number of our days for a reason. Because we need to daily be going to God. We can't say I'm going to. We need to go. It teaches us the number of our days. The illustration, my dad uses this illustration a lot, of 70 years. If this front wall to the back wall was 1,000,000 years, the width of this piece of paper would be 70 years. It's that small. It's fleeting. That's why we got to take every second. We've got to do everything. What is our life? It's fleeting. We got a purpose, plan now. What is our lives? It's final. There's no reset. There's no second chances. Once it's done, it's done. There's no respawn. So that's what James tells us. He says, hey, what's your life? It's a vapor. It appears, and then it's gone. It's here, and it's not here. So he says, hey, consider your life. What is it? Then he asks us, what hindrances are there in our life? Verse 16, it says, but now you boast in your arrogance, and all such boasting is evil. Therefore, to him who knows to do good and does it not, to him it is sin. And he just gives us a few. He says boasting, it's rejoicing or glorying in something that shouldn't be gloried in. Something that's not given to God. Arrogance is empty or bragatory talk. An empty presumption which trusts in the stability of earthly things. Which, if you know anything, earthly things are not stable. We shouldn't be putting trust in it. That's what arrogant talk is. That's what arrogance is. And what James here says is, he says, all such boasting, all such rejoicing is sin. Sin is another, when you research it, it means Satan. It's of Satan. That's what boasting, that's what rejoicing in things that aren't given to God, aren't for God. It's evil. How about the sin of omission? That's what verse 17 says. Therefore, to him who knows to do good and does it not, to him is sin. It's a sin of omission, not acting on what you know to be right. What's the good that we know? What is the good that we need to know, or that we know to do? What is something good that we know to do in our lives? That's an open question.
Devotions.
Yes. Pretty much devotions, and a lot more. But living for God. We know that we should live for God, but we don't do it. And so then it's sin. We know what to do. We know what's right, but we don't do it. It's interesting, the phrase "I'm going to" is the most sinful declaration we can make. Because we always say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, but we never get to it. Whenever your parent tells you to do something, it was like me with the trash or dishes. My mom told me to do, hey, take out the trash, do the dishes. I tell them I'm gonna, she says, no, you're going to, right now. Why? Because I'm not in charge. I can't make the claim that I'm going to do it later, because A, might not do it later, and B, my mom wants it done now. We can't just say, we can't live life by saying I'm gonna, because we'll never do it. So James here says, hey, consider your life. What is it? Turn over to Romans 12. Because James says, consider your life. And Paul says here in Romans, surrender your life. Surrender your life. Paul follows the same, or James follows the same pattern, I guess, as Paul, you could say. There's a call here that Paul gives. But Paul is calling us here to live our life, a life of surrender. James is saying, hey, consider your life. You don't know what will happen tomorrow. Paul says, because of that, consider surrender your life. So James 12, 1 and 2 says this, I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable to God, which is your reasonable service. And do not be conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good, that acceptable, and that perfect will of God. Okay, being real, we got to surrender. Surrender is a living sacrifice. Verse 1, it says, I beseech you. Paul gives a call here. It says, I beseech you as a requestful call. I beseech you, I beg you, I plead with you. He's begging them to listen. He's begging them to understand. And Paul says here, I beseech you, I beg of you, listen. Beg of you. But therefore, brethren, therefore means what Paul had talked about earlier. And Paul had just written about doctrine. Tons and tons of doctrine. And he follows this similar outline to most of his books, where it starts with doctrine and then it goes to application. And Paul says here, because of what I've taught you, live a life pleasing to God. Be a living sacrifice. It's because, he says, hey, by the mercies of God. Because of God's mercy on your life, that he justified you from the guilt and penalty of sin, that he adopted us, gave us adoption, that he placed us under grace and not the law. Those mercies that God gave us, that God allows us to live, hey, by God's mercies, I call you to be a living sacrifice. We have to be a living sacrifice. He says that. He says, holy and acceptable. Holy means to be set apart, to be different. Acceptable means to be well-pleasing. We are to live well-pleasing lives for God. Living sacrifice that is acceptable to God. And why do we have to be a living sacrifice? Well, he says, which is your reasonable service. It's our reasonable service. Reasonable service means a logical job. It is our logical job, because of what God has done for us, to live a life for Him. To live a life of worship for Him. It's logical. Because of what He's done for us. Because of what God has already done, we should be a living sacrifice. So to say, be a living sacrifice, he says, be transformed, changing yourself. And says, and do not be conformed to the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. He says, be transformed, not conformed. Conform means to align with the world, to align with something that's wrong, to be fashioned to an incorrect pattern. And Paul says, hey, don't be conformed, be transformed. Be different. Different from the world, different from your old simple self. He writes in Ephesians 3, he says in Ephesians 3, but you have not so learned Christ. If indeed you have learned him and have been taught by him as with trust as truth in Jesus, that you put off concerning the former conduct. Be different from the former conduct. The old man which grows corrupt according to the deceitful lusts, and be renewed in the spirit of your mind, that you may put on the new man, which was created according to God in the true righteousness and holiness. So he says, hey, be different. Be changed. Be transformed. How? By the renewing of your mind. By a renovated mind. By a changed mind. Be different. And why? That we may prove. That we may be proven. Testing yourself. He says, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Prove it. What's good? It's upright, distinguished, excellent. We know it's good. We get told by parents, that was a good job. That was an excellent job. Or acceptable, well-pleasing, perfect, brought to completeness. That we may fulfill the will of God for our lives. That's why we surrender ourselves. We need to evaluate, we need to consider our lives, and we need to surrender our lives to God because it fulfills God's will for our life. There's specific will, but there's general will. God wants all of us to serve him. It's interesting. BeReal, the app that this sermon title is kind of based on, interesting, BeReal, it's a time-sensitive notification on iPhone. It comes up as time-sensitive. You have 2 minutes to capture a BeReal and post it so your friends can see what you're up to and so you can see what your friends are up to. It's interesting, life is the same way in a lot of ways. You have a certain amount of time to take or to live, but you don't know how long. BeReal, we know how much time we have, so we've mapped it out. I've done this, where I know, okay, I have 2 minutes. I can go get this sweatshirt, I can put this document up on my laptop so I look like I'm doing something, when I'm really just laying on bed doing nothing. We like to map out a lot, make people think we're actually busier than we are. It's made so that we're not that way, but we make our lives look more interesting than it actually is. You can't do that in real life. You can't do that. Well, I can't go, I don't know, okay, I got 70 years. I can live this, I can do this, this, and this, just to make sure my life looks this good. No, you can't do that. You can't live your life that way. Because you don't know how long you have. I like this quote, I don't know who it's from, but it says, the years of life will soon be past, and only what's done for Christ lasts. When we get to having nothing we do for sports, nothing we do for the world, none of them matter. Only what's done for God matters. When we stand before him and he asks us, what have we done for him? That's all that will matter, what we do for Christ. Or when we ask the question, if you're standing before God today and you ask you, why should I let you in heaven? And what will you say? My good works? Nope, that doesn't get you in heaven. What would I say to him? I trusted in your Son. Only what's done for Christ will last. I'm going to have Pastor Perry. I want everybody heads bowed down close, please. I'm going to have Pastor Perry come up in a second. I just want us to think, though. How are our lives? What are our lives? Consider your life. What have you done for Christ this week? How have you lived your life? If you were to die today, and he were to ask you, what have you done for me? What would you tell him? Or if he were to ask you, what have you done for the world? How many baseball games did you play last 13 years compared to how many times you shared the gospel? Once you consider your life, consider it. What mindset did you live your life in? What is your life? And then what hindrances are there to stop you from living a godly life? And I want you to, if at all possible, I want you to think about how you can surrender your life to God this week. It's not like a specific thing, I'm starting to go to the mission field, but just living a life for Him. How can I do better at living my life for God each and every day?